So I'll begin the introduction for our lovely folks that are joining us. My name is Julia Ray Hoddenfield. I'm the Adult Services Support Specialist at New Canaan Library, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you to tonight's program featuring author Bonnie Tsui and Matt Busse to discuss why we swim. Before I give you a brief introduction of our speakers tonight, I'd just like to clarify that this is a Zoom webinar. So you wonderful audience members, we love you, but you cannot be seen or heard. So don't worry. At the top right, also you'll see in the corner either speaker view or gallery view. I'm going to recommend that you do gallery view so that you can see both Bonnie and Matt. Additionally, I hope that this is a very lively conversation, so feel encouraged to contribute your thoughts and questions in either the chat or the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. I think Bonnie and Matt are going to try to keep an eye on that throughout the program. Now that we have our housekeeping out of the way, I can introduce tonight's speakers. Bonnie Tsui has written for the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Atlantic, Outside, and other publications. Why We Swim, her latest book, which you can pick up at Elm Street Books in New Canaan, was named Editor's Choice by the New York Times Book Review and a Boston Globe's and Los Angeles Times bestseller. Her previous book, American Chinatown, was the winner of Asia Pacific American Award for Literature and San Francisco Chronicle bestseller. She lives, swims, and surfs in the San Francisco Bay Area. So you can find out her website at bonnietsui.com. Matt Busse is the director of pool operations at New Canaan YMCA. He grew up in New Fairfield, Connecticut, a lake town known for its deeply rooted culture in aquatic recreation. Growing up, Matt swam in the town's 3 major bodies of water and found himself in the lakes and ponds on the first warm day of May to the last warm day of October, which is probably coming up around soon, right? Matt started his career in aquatics as a lifeguard at the Squanch Pond State Park and continued as a state park beach director where he managed 8 Connecticut state park beaches. Matt began his time with the New Canaan YMCA in 2019 as the assistant aquatic director and has taught many children and lifeguards. Matt is currently pursuing his master's degree in recreation administration, focusing on nonprofit management. He has been a member of the Impact Panel for Water Safety Task Force for the Commission on Women, Children, and Seniors, where he stressed the importance of safety around the water, parents engaging with their children in water. I'm so pleased to welcome tonight's speakers, and on a personal note, Bonnie's book had a profound impact on me in the summer, leading me to swim nearly every day, often at the beach, but also at the New Canaan YMCA, where I know that Matt has worked incredibly hard to get the pools open for use. So now we can begin our program, starting with Bonnie, giving us a little bit of background and information about her book. So thank you and welcome.
Thanks so much, Julia Ray, and thank you, Matt, and thanks all of you for joining us. I don't know how many of you were present when we were just beginning this session, but back right at before the beginning of our lockdown at the end of February, I had the pleasure of meeting Julia Ray at the Public Librarians Conference in Nashville, and it was the first public forum where I presented Why We Swim, and it was so exciting to get to talk to librarians. I mean, just because librarians are the best book audience ever, you can imagine, and we just had such a wonderful time, and it was the first experience of really talking to the public and presenting Why We Swim to the wider world. And it was really exciting, and little did I know that that would be the only live event in person that I would do in this book and strange time that we've been living in. But it has been really special, actually, and unforeseen ways to launch this book during this time, because what I couldn't have imagined was to be putting out a book about swimming in a time when a lot of people couldn't swim. And so a lot of readers out there were really longing for and missing the waters near them. And so they were looking for other ways to kind of commune with something that's really important to them. And so it has been very profound and moving and wonderful to connect with all those readers. And then as people are getting to swim again, slowly over sort of the arc of the last few months, it has been this sort of like joyful, coming back to a thing that means so much, and not just in a physical exercise sort of way, but in a wellness and, emotional, like coping, psychologically cleansing way, in a way that we all really, really need so deeply right now. And so it's been so fun to think about talking to you all and talking to Matt about all the work that a Y can do for a community, and especially because we all become swimmers. Well, ideally we all become swimmers from a young age, right? And we all have to be taught how to swim. And I found a great little photo from my visit home in New
Oh, that's
York this
awesome.
summer. This is my parents on a beach in Hong Kong, after
Oh, no
they
way. That's so cool.
shortly
That's
after they met.
awesome.
So my dad was a lifeguard and my
Okay.
mom was a swimmer, and so they met in a swimming pool in Hong Kong where my father was working. And we grew up in New York. I was born in Flushing, Queens, and we grew
Okay.
up swimming. We were taking lessons at the community pool. It wasn't a Y, but it was close to it. And then when I got older, I joined the swim team, and that's me in the red, lane
Oh,
4.
oh, that's incredible. Gotta love lane
So,
4. It's a good lane. It's a good lane to be in. Middle of the pool's best part of the pool.
I have such and now, of course, I have such an appreciation, a renewed appreciation for what a community pool can do, because my kids, who are 7 and 10, they learn to swim at the Berkeley downtown YMCA here,
Oh,
and
no
then
way.
they join the swim team, and they are now sort of on hiatus from swimming, but hopefully the community pool will open up again. And so we kind of wanted to talk to all of you about this weird time in swimming. What is it like to reopen a community pool, and sort of how, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I want to interview Matt as much as he wants to interview me. But I'll
I
throw it to
think fourth body, absolutely. Feel free. Feel free. So actually, let's talk about that. I noticed that you posted an article about the anatomy of a pool during COVID-19, and I thought it was very phenomenally written. And I just want to know from your perspective, what have you seen in pools, that just the new anatomy of how things are going and how aquatics is
Right.
going from
I
just
mean,
a
and I'm
participant
sure you
perspective.
have witnessed this at the Y in New Canaan, which is that the capacity is so much reduced. You really have to,
Yes.
it's all about keeping your patrons separate, but also I'm sure you've seen the relief and joy of everyone kind of coming back to the pool, from the kids to the seniors who are able to do laps or like do rec swim. And I wrote about the reopening of a pool here in El Cerrito, not too far from where I live. It's not the pool that I normally swim in, but
Okay.
it's one of the community pools here in the East Bay of San Francisco. And I mean, just to see the look on people's faces, but it's also very strange, right? It's very
Right.
quiet. Most pools
Quiet.
are very noisy.
Everyone wears the masks
Yeah,
until you get in the water, and then you're in the water and
exactly.
still no talking, and it's just straight swimming. Best way
Yeah,
to put it.
yeah.
It's just
But
going down the lane
but
and
to
coming
be
back.
able to manage it safely is just, I think now that many pools have been able to reopen safely, it's less of anxiety to know that
Yes.
it can be done.
Yep.
And so I guess I was curious, from your perspective, what has been really hard? What are the hardest things, and what has been really rewarding about seeing people come back?
Sure. So one of the toughest things that I'm encountering is the desire to swim from members and the availability on our end.
Yeah.
So we have all of our teams practicing. We have our synchronized swimming team, dive team, and swim team practicing. In the afternoons, we host the high school swim team here in the afternoons, and that's when a lot of people find time that they can swim. Also, now that
Right.
everyone is working from home, or vast majority of people are working from home rather, they have a lot more flexibility in their schedule to come to the pools instead of our normal peak times, which are early mornings and late in the evening. Our peak time is all day.
All
There
day.
is not a single slot where there is an availability, which is great. It's great for us to know that the community has this desire to swim and that we have the ability to provide this to them. But I feel for these members, because I wish that I could just magically create a pool and say, hey, here's an extra 20 lanes for everyone to swim, because there's such a strong desire. But that's the toughest challenge. And I think the most rewarding thing is hearing the thank you from everybody when they come on the pool, like saying, thank you so much for reopening. We're so happy to be back swimming. A lot of people are still a little nervous, and I get it about going to the gym and going upstairs and working out in our gym up here, but a lot of people feel at ease when they jump into the water and they know that the chlorine is working effectively. They know that the guards are sanitizing everything after every session, from their 50-minute lap swim session in between for the 10 minutes. All the guards are cleaning the benches, all the touch points on the pool deck. So they feel comfortable and confident coming to the pools, which is great.
That's really, really great. Well done.
Thank
I mean,
you.
any place that
Challenge.
can bring people back to the water is just, it's, it's such a gift right now.
It is such a gift.
Yeah.
And so actually, first I want to talk to you about community building, because there was a part before I even read your book, which, by the way, your book was phenomenal, Bonnie. I enjoyed it from end to end. I read it and I listened to the audiobook. I'm an audiobook.
Oh, wow.
I'm an hour commute to work and an hour commute from work. So it was great to listen to it on my ride home and then follow up with the actual physical copy. I am a history person. I love history. I love fact finding. I love research. So to read your book and to listen to your book and to hear everything from the Icelandic swimming to the samurai swimming currently in Japan and the art form of that, all the way down to the Sahara Desert and how people used to dive down for mussels in the Sahara Desert as a form of food finding. It was beautifully written. I enjoyed it from end to end. So thank you for writing such a great book.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And there was one thing when Julia Ray approached me about doing this, there was one thought that came into my mind. And I want to say it was in your first chapter of your book where you said that water is, when everyone comes to the water, it's like a watering hole for animals where they all come to drink, and it's a community. And you see every different life form at the water dependent on the source just to come back. And I thought it was phenomenal that you brought up that that's a community. And here at the Y, our pools are a community. We have our lap swimmers who come in to swim. We have our brand new swimmers who are evolving into our future lap swimmers, our future lifeguards, future team participants. And you hit the note when you said it was just like the watering holes where the animals come to. Just like it is here. It's great to see everyone show up and form a community here. And here at the Y, where we're about community building, and really enhancing our community here. You hit it spot on, and there's nothing better.
I love that you read that image. I mean, you read that description and then saw it translated, superimposed at the Y, because that thrills me, because, when I was writing that, I was thinking about my superimposition in my mind was like when I'm at Jones Beach,
right?
And watching all of the, the families and the different, everyone of different ages, also different swimming abilities, kind of flocking to the water, like unable to resist that pull. Like it's really such a magnetic draw, right? And then seeing that, and then of course I was thinking of, animals in the savannah, kind of like, trying to find water sources and all that, and so I love then that you read that image and said, okay, what I see every day is varying swimmers, human swimmers of varying ages and abilities, and where they are in the evolution of their lives as swimmers, kind of flocking to our pools. And I love that so much. Like that's another then like layer that I'm layering on mine.
Oh, awesome.
Really great.
And it was a beautiful transition, because I walked out of my meeting with Julia Ray and I went down to the pool, and we had a synchronized swimming private lesson going on. We had some lessons going on, and we had the lap swimmers in the pool. And I just took a glimpse. I was like, you know what, this was a beautiful transition to see, just from that statement, to see all these different facets of the community right in our pool at this moment. And it blew my mind. I was like, what a beautiful connection. I couldn't get over it.
That is awesome.
So thank you for writing that little piece there, because that is the best translation I could ever think of to talk about water.
Thank you.
It's like the watering hole. It brings everyone together. So speaking of magnetic things, what drew you to the water, and where did you start? Where did you start swimming? When did you start swimming?
I started swimming around age 5. Okay. So my brother is a year older than I am, and so we started swimming, taking lessons at ages 5 and 6. Just summer lessons, and so we would go back every summer, to the neighborhood pool, and at beginner, advanced beginner, intermediate, all that stuff, and then at life saving and all that. And so after, I guess I was around 9 when we were given the choice of swim team or soccer, and I hated soccer. I hated getting like kicked at. And so my brother and I just said, we're swim team, and
There you
we
go.
just never looked back. It was really, I mean, in retrospect, it just really did change my life, right? So um, I always think back to that team experience as one where I found my tribe, and my tribe was so incredibly, diverse. Like it was people
Yeah,
from all over Long Island,
that's
from
awesome.
different socioeconomic
Yeah,
um, uh, backgrounds, and it felt like it was important for me because I grew up in a pretty, and I read about this in the book. I grew up in a pretty white town, and my school was very white, and so to join a team that was just had people who looked more like me or different or just like varying shades of skin
yeah,
tones and backgrounds was that was really profound for me because then I wasn't the only one, the only person of color, and of course now I have different language to talk about that experience, but also there's something very essential about bodies and water, right? Bodies and water together, mixing. And so that was, and then in the sort of course of the research of the book, finding out all of these stories and history, the history of race and segregation and pools and sort of evolution of pools in
yeah.
America is so it's so tied to who gets access, who gets education. And I know you as someone who is so steeped in swimming education and wanting it to be available to everyone. That's a major issue, for teachers and educators in this country. And so it was really interesting to connect all the dots for me, and very
Sure.
important to do so. And it seemed, when this book came out, then there was a moment then, of course, of all the things that have been happening this year, just conversations about race that have been very intense and eye-opening and important to continue. And many, I think many people didn't think about them in the same way. And so um, we are the fire is lit under us to be much more engaged with difficult questions.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
I feel I feel very grateful that I had the opportunity to research that, to write about it, and then to talk about it.
Yeah, which is
Um,
awesome. And I'm glad that you
yeah,
had the opportunity to write about it. It was very well written. And one thing that does touch home to me, working at Squanson State Park on the weekends, we serviced a lot of people from New York City who would come up, which
yeah,
was phenomenal. And I was so thankful to see that people are venturing outside of the city to
yeah,
come somewhere to find what they called their second home. A lot
yeah.
of people found this park in the late 60s, early 70s, and they've been coming ever since. And a
Mhm.
lot of the people that did show up were of lower socioeconomic status that did not have access to water down in the city. And it
Mhm.
broke my heart that most of the saves that I've made at my time in state parks are those who had never had access to water safety, never had access to swim
Mhm.
lessons. And it breaks my heart that in society, this is something that we do still face, that
Right.
water education is so restricted still. To
Mhm.
like, I grew up in New Fairfield. We have a pool in the high school. There was swim lessons offered to middle schoolers and high schoolers. There was swim lessons offered to the town because we grew up on multiple lakes, and throughout the summer we had access to this, and the families had access to this from the town recreation department. But not a lot of places have that ability to say, hey, we can fund for everybody. Have everyone
Right.
come and take a free swim lesson or take a reduced price swim lesson. That's why I like working here at the Y is we offer that opportunity. We are able to
Yeah.
say, hey, we're not going to turn down anybody based on socioeconomic status. Apply for a scholarship. We'll give you a scholarship so that you can come swim. And that's why I love working here for that. So
Yeah.
we can provide to the community in that sense.
Well, it's not just access financially or having a geographic location where like a physical place that's available to you. It's
Right.
also feeling welcome. I mean,
Yes.
it's a huge part of it
That is a
for,
big
I
one.
know a lot of Black Americans and Black families who, uh, want to have their children take swim lessons, or that they, once they kind of get into like maybe the swim team circuit, you know, finding out that they feel pretty isolated in, you know, the competitive swimming world is pretty white in this
Yeah.
country. And, you know, I talked to an organization called Black Kids Swim, and their whole mission is to increase the participation of Black swimmers
That's
in
awesome.
competitive swimming. And they have done so much to do that and to encourage participation, to raise awareness, and also, but just to what I found from talking to the founders of the organization is like also tweaking the um, the sort of cultural mainstream understanding and association of Black people and swimming, you know. And there's, of
Yeah.
course, over the arc of history in this country, there has been a lot of negative associations, and people don't understand that that's because of this history of racism and segregation that has
Right.
kept, you know, Black Americans from swimming. And it's not because of anything that they did, you know, and
Right.
it's because of the sort of the systemic institutional racism that has created this rift. So
Right.
I feel like it's a very nuanced thing to explore and to talk about, and it's not boiled down to simple, um, uh, you know, stories or solutions. But I think that we're all more willing to engage with those, uh, you know, that conversation and those solutions now than
Right.
we have been, even though they're very painful, you know.
But you know, it's great to have those conversations and to build a community and to feel welcome at a pool or to feel welcome swimming at a beach is important,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes down to swim lessons. That's the biggest thing is when you're in a swim lesson, you don't want to just be you and three other kids sitting there and you're just sitting there by yourself, not engaged, and you're just engaging with your instructor. You want to build that community. And I feel that's the biggest factor that plays into swim lessons for success
Yeah.
is
You have
I
to
have this
trust
connection.
your
And
teacher.
that
Yeah. You
and
have to.
I wish, you know, looking at race, looking at socioeconomic status, it would be great to bring everyone to a pool and form a connection with one instructor and say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to swim. I want to teach you how to swim because I want to see you succeed no matter your race, no matter your background. And that's what, you know, just personal. I wish that's something we did as a nation. That would be amazing. I wish we did that as a world because it would be amazing to say, hey, no one's gonna miss out on the opportunity to learn the basics of swimming, or no one's gonna
Right.
miss out on the
So,
basics.
it's so fun. It's so freeing. It's
Yeah.
you know, and I keep thinking back, yeah, just to so many people I have met over the years who, for whatever reason, haven't learned to swim or are not confident in their swimming, and then it becomes this kind of like traumatic, you know, maybe they think about, you know, whether you love it or you hate it, there's like a really impassioned feeling around it, you know, and it traces back to like this terrible experience they had when they were a kid,
Yep.
really afraid, and they never wanted to do it again, or even as an adult that they had
Yep.
some experience with, maybe at the, you know, at the beach, or where they felt like they had a near drowning, and so they didn't want to ever feel that way again, of course. And that's
Yeah.
like, that is power. I mean, that is
That is
like
power.
in,
So talking about experiences in college, I used to lifeguard and I used to teach some lessons.
yeah,
And one of my really close friends, she moved here from Haiti.
yeah,
And when she was younger, she had a drowning experience in the ocean. And that deterred her from swimming.
yeah,
So growing up, her parents said, you know, oh, we're not going to throw you in the water. We're not going to throw you to swim. You don't like swimming. You cry every time you go to the pool. You know, we're gonna keep you away from swimming. So we were in college, and she was presented with the opportunity to go on a cruise with her friends. And she
oh.
goes, Matt, I need your help. I don't know how to swim. And if anything ever happened and I get thrown from the boat or the boat goes under, I don't know how to swim and my chances are slim. So can you help me? I was like, absolutely, let's get in the pool. So, you know, she told me, she goes, growing up, she grew up in Haiti, and she goes, growing up in Haiti, I was surrounded by water all the time, but I still never got the chance to swim because I had that one little incident when I was younger that I cried because I had a drowning experience in the ocean. I would cry every time I went to water as a kid. So my parents didn't put me in the pool and didn't put me through swim lessons. So those moments too also play a huge role in the future of people with swimming and
So much.
water.
Yeah.
Yep.
And actually, this is reminding me of that conference where I met Julia Ray, where Actually, quite a few people, librarians came up and said, they said, I'm a lifelong swimmer. I can't wait to read your book. But then there were, I was really moved by the people who said, I actually just started swim lessons. Um, I have been afraid and for whatever reason, or I've always wanted to do this, and that they did take this huge, very, it's very brave to do that as a grown up, I think. I mean, to do anything,
Right.
to choose to learn something that is so also very like essential and is difficult, but also is very sort of like hardwired in us to
Yes.
have some, while we are drawn to the water, there's some sense and understanding, especially as you get older, that there's a lot to fear, right?
Yes.
You haven't grown
Yep.
up super comfortable in the water, and so I find that and there are and I told those people that there's something in this book for them as well, because I wanted this book to be like this open, expansive conversation about our human relationship with water,
Yes.
whether you do call yourself a swimmer or not, and why is that, and
Yeah.
all of that, again, exploring all of that cultural and scientific and historical context was really important to me to be able to do.
Yes. So let's talk about culture for a minute, because I love culture. I love exploring cultures and seeing cultures and absorb myself in other cultures. So culture with swim teams, you have a history with swim teams, and when you're growing up around the swim team, being on a swim team is both isolating and team building, because you are a facet of the team. You're swimming on your own and you're providing for your team to get those points to win. What was the culture like when you were growing up with the swim team, and how did it feel to be kind of almost like a lone wolf in the pack of wolves, as I like to say?
Well, that's so true, because at the moment of your race, you are you're alone, right? You get up on the blocks and
Mhm.
the starting gun goes off and you're in the water. And something about immersion too, because of the sensory perception that is altered, like in the water, you can't really hear, you can't really see. You might be wearing your Speedo Vanquishers,
Right,
as
we
we
were in
are
these to
now,
see,
right?
you know.
You can't, maybe your goggles fog up or they fill with water after you dive in, and so you're not you don't have the sensory input that you normally have on land,
Right.
and that itself I think is very special and makes swimming very unique in terms of a sport, that you're competing as a team, but in individual races, and also in the experience of racing, you are in like this kind of like a tunnel, I guess, or just you're
Okay.
in a medium that completely takes you
Yeah.
its embrace, something like that. And
Okay.
so you kind of like get through it as quickly as you can. I mean, in most swimming competitions, it is about speed,
Yep.
and um, and then you come out of it, and then there's the noise, then there's the communing with your
Right.
teammates, then there's that celebration. But in the work itself, you're alone. And I find that so interesting. And I talked about the psychology of that. I talked to sports psychologists in the book about Olympians who and why they were able to succeed so well, like Michael
Right.
Phelps, Ledecky, and just what it takes,
Yeah.
to motivate you to do that. And it is a very, I love the description of Katie Ledecky as a stone cold assassin, as she when she competes.
Yeah.
She is by all accounts so nice, like the
Oh,
nice.
she is phenomenal. Yeah, she is an incredible swimmer, and her timing in the Olympics is absolutely phenomenal. And she is a role model for so many young
Right.
ladies out there. Yep. And I do apologize. I just need to plug the laptop in. It did
Oh,
unplug,
sure.
so I apologize. I thought it was plugged in, but I am listening and I am all ears.
No worries.
Little technical
Bear
difficulty.
with us. Technical
Bear with
difficulties.
us.
I might look at the
For a
chat to
moment,
see what
y'all.
questions there are. All right, let's see.
But as you were saying about the decky and swimming,
Yeah.
it's important to have a culture of swimming created with competition. And
Yeah.
even though it might not be a strict competition like it is, like we were talking earlier about how Julia Ray and I have no real background in football, but seeing it as a competition, seeing it change with COVID-19 for the high schools and how that's affecting it. to even now with swim teams, our teams here, our synchronized swimming team and dive team are top 3 in the nation. Our swim team is top 15 in the nation. And to see such a culture built behind the swim team, even throughout COVID, is phenomenal. To see that the swimmers are still a unit. See, they all come in together, they all participate together, and they all support each other. Mm-hmm. So it's phenomenal to see a sport where you are the lone wolf, but you still have the support of your pack in order to succeed.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
The Olympics too, where you have the national team supporting you when you go to the Olympics, where, hey, we might be in the stands watching, we're not on the deck cheering you on, but you are part of our national team and we are here to root you on.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing to watch that happen with a young swimmer too. Like I'm watching my kids who are 7 and 10 just really starting to feel a part of their team. Right. And unfortunately, that was interrupted by COVID, but hopefully we'll get back to in-person practice soon. But my son Felix got his parka today. Actually, it was
that's awesome.
Yeah, I got on the with you guys, and one of the other parents on the team finally dropped off this part. I mean, this was like last year that he had ordered this, and he put it on. It says Armada, has his name, and it was awesome. A big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. So speaking of things that with swimming and kind of like a rite of passage almost when you're on the team, you get your parka. When I was growing up, I grew up along Ball Pond in New Fairfield, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the 3 major bodies in New Fairfield. We have Ball Pond, Squan's Pond, and Canwood Lake. Squan's Pond hosts our state park. And then Canwood Lake is the largest lake in Connecticut. And it hosts so many different swim teams and beaches, private community beaches, as well as town beaches. So it's phenomenal to see all the different kids participating in swim practices and even recreational swim throughout the summer. But one rite of passage I had growing up with my friends, every summer, we had a mile-long swim. And it would be from the Ball Pond Property Owners Association Beach, which is the little community that my parents belong to. Uh-huh. You had to swim out to this red house on the other side of the lake and back. And it was a mile long and you couldn't stop. That was the goal. If you could do that, you can go outside the ropes of the pond or outside of the beach. You can go hang out. You don't need a float. You don't need to be with a parent. If you can do that, you're all set. And my friends and I, every summer, at the start of the summer, right before school would end, that first weekend before school would end, we'd go out to the red house and back and say, all right, we did it. We're ready. We're ready for summer.
It feels so good. I mean, we've had similar kinds of, at different camps and things that that if you want to be able to use either the pools or the lakes unrestricted, you have to have these tests. And I think that for kids, it's such great motivation because kids are kids and they just were like, yeah, I can swim to the red house, or I can swim to the...
I can swim that far and back.
And it's also super scary, I think, when you're little and you haven't done it before. And so, now I think back to when this is like a very micro version of it, but to jump off the diving board for the first time. I remember when my son was, I think he was 5 or 6, and he was just standing there, and then he just went, and I still can picture him like flying in midair off the board, and it was like this very proud, because I can remember how I felt when I, was, tasked with doing all of these, swimming tests, and I'm still close enough, or the memories are still vivid enough that I can put myself there, and I think we all have those very visceral, very sensorily rich memories, because our first experiences with water are very formative.
Absolutely.
Because they're not.
I have a ton of great memories of like rites of passage with water, where becoming a lifeguard, that's a rite of passage.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had to swim. I took a lifeguarding course in high school, and I wanted to avoid gym class because none of my friends were in my gym class. I'll be honest, I did not want to take it. I walked into the class, like, I'm not friends with a single person in this class. I want to be with my friends in lifeguarding, which is going on at the same time. So that day I walked down in the lifeguarding class and I looked at the teacher and I said, Mr. Greer, I want to take lifeguarding. He goes, all right, if you can swim a 500, I'll let you in the class. I did not swim the 500 on the first try. On the last lap, cramped up. on my right
Oh
leg.
no!
My calf cramped up, and I actually became the victim. I had to grab the landline. And he goes, "You were so close. Come back tomorrow in the afternoon. I'll let you do it again." Did it again, and I joined the class. And the class went down from 26 kids to 10. And it was
Wow, why is that?
so a lot of the kids failed the swim test within the first few laps. And then two of the kids, we do a brick test where you have to swim out, dive down to the deepest part of the pool and pick up a 10-pound brick. And a lot of kids failed that part too.
Yeah.
That's a tough part. I personally pull people off the bottom of the pool from that drill whenever it comes to prerequisites for a new lifeguard or even prerequisites for a lifeguard recertification. I've had to jump in and pull people off the bottom of the pool because they couldn't pick that brick up and bring it all the way up to the surface. So the strength that's needed and the endurance that's needed, a lot of people say, "Oh, that's easy, I could do that. That's a breeze." Surprisingly, it's tougher than it looks.
Bring it up like this, you got to get yourself under it.
Got to get yourself up. You got to angle yourself. And the really tough part about that brick challenge, besides just picking it up off the bottom of the pool, is kicking on your back while it's kind of held right above your chest or right on your chest. A lot of people tend to pick their face forward and swallow water, and then they end up becoming the victim, or they tilt their head too far back and water runs right up their nose, and they get a little confused and a little bamboozled, and they don't know where they are.
So the granularity with which you understand this brick test is very impressive.
I've done so many. I've hosted so many because in order to be a lifeguard here at the Y, you need to take the brick test. So I want to say, all right, let's baseline you, because anybody could judge based on the brick test where you've been. They can judge based on your prerequisite skills and say, all right, that day you passed all the prerequisites, you're now a lifeguard because you're able to pass prerequisites and perform all the skills. Great. But from that day forward, it's now if I hire you, it's my responsibility to make sure you're still able to maintain that. So a lot of lifeguards are like, "Oh, you know what? I did it once. I'm great. I'm certified lifeguard. I don't need to worry about anything." But the amount of training that goes into being a lifeguard and the amount of constant physical training and constant mental training is incredible. I, as someone who became a beach director and aquatic director, didn't realize the amount of training that was needed for lifeguards when I first stepped into the role. I thought it was, oh, it's easy management. It's just like, it's managing. That's all it is. But no, there's so many different angles and lenses you have to look through with aquatic management. And there's so many different things to aquatic management than just saying, oh, it's just people. It's unique and diverse.
Yeah, and you need to make sure those people are qualified. I remember all of the, I remember being a lifeguard as a, young person. And I remember it was really my first job. Mm-hmm. And it was a job that kind of I worked through college.
My first job too. I loved it. Working for Squanspon State Park was my favorite time. A lot of my friends and I still talk about it. My best friend of 20 years, Alex, her and I worked together. We got the job together. She actually when I left State Parks, she became the beach director. And she's been there ever since, which is phenomenal. And she loves water as much as I do. And to work at Squanspon, there it was unique. We again had rites of passage there too. You had to jump off the rock because we have a rock there. We have 3 rocks. We have rock 1, 2, and 3. Easy. But rock 3 used to have a rope swing attached to it. And back in the early and late 90s, there was a lot of drownings. So they took down the rope swing. They kind of cornered off the area, and a lot of people would still go out there and jump off and drown.
Yeah.
So we had to know what it was. So what we did is we wanted to know what it was like for those people who did jump off the rock. So we used to jump off the rock as a rite of passage to say, all right, we can do it. Now we know what everyone else is experiencing. So when we go out to save them, we're not just like, oh no, they just fell in the water and drowned. No, it's a unique experience because they jumped from a 30-foot high surface into the water and they're spooked. It's usually people who have zero swimming background or any understanding of water. They just did it because their friends did it, or it was their cultural rite of passage to say, my dad did it, so I can do it. Right. Or my dad did it, and I want to learn how to do it. So
yeah, that reminds me of the summer I had because I was back east visiting family. I had the opportunity to be swimming in a rock quarry in Massachusetts. And
oh, awesome!
Quarries are amazing, but they're also incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
There are so many drownings that happen every year because it attracts the same people you're describing, where it's people who maybe are not as strong swimmers, maybe they're teenagers or young people who are sort of like they're daring each other to do it, right. And they don't know the depth of the water at any point in time because it's not a uniform, it's not a pool, it's not marked. Yep. And you either there's like debris underwater or there's they're not prepared for the shock of the temperature of the water. Oftentimes it's very cold beneath the
Yep.
surface. So we were explaining to the kids, you have to ease into it first, make sure you kind of test, kind of see and check out, suss out where you're going to jump in. Even though you see people doing it, you need to look.
Yep.
And it was this whole like very interesting conversation about like water safety with the kids, and they're like, we already know how to swim, let's just jump off here. And we're just like, nope. This is how it's done. I think we should take a look at some of the questions here. And
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like there's some good ones that have formed so far. I'm going to go back up because I'm going to scroll up. I saw some good ones earlier about goggles.
Goggles. Okay.
Goggles.
Different goggles in the pool than the bear open water. I don't. I just use these. These are the Speedo Vanquishers. Matt and I were geeking out about these.
We're geeking out with them. I love them so much. These are my all-time favorite goggles.
There's no difference. They fit really well. The only thing that we were talking about earlier was fogging up. And neither one of us has ever found any solution that really worked. I mean, you can spit in them all you want. You can use the anti-fog stuff. The only stuff that for me has worked with any regularity is that you get a new pair, you get like 6 uses out of them, and then they start fogging up. Better news, but that's just how it's done.
Yep, and it's there's no way to say they're not going to fog up. I always end up mid-swim just tilting them in the water, treading water, washing off and going back. Like, it's not a waste of energy so I can see. That's what I like to say. I'm like, I'm not wasting energy, I'm making it so I can see.
And then Margot says, I love the idea of swimming being a part of school. Many people can't afford proper swim classes. Having swimming be a part of school promotes inclusivity as well. How expensive is it to manage a pool? Is it within a public school's budget? What about gym class field trips to the Y even, or the ocean if it's local? Oh. I have been, one of the really interesting things I learned about in the process of researching this book globally was, I'd be in countries where swimming education is mandatory. So
Iceland, for example, you wrote about the Guflager, right? That was
yeah.
Yes.
Well, so the story that opens the book is about this Icelandic fisherman who his fishing vessel capsized one night in the winter, and everyone else drowned, but he swam 6 hours in the open ocean in 41-degree water to safety, and he survived. Not only because he is a very good swimmer, and it's because of the culture of Iceland being very mandatory swimming education. It's an island country. It's a fishing country, and swimming has been a part of that life, and also lives lost at sea for its entire history. But that he also had this biological quirk that saved him, which is that his body fat was 2 to 3 times normal human thickness, and so he was able to keep swimming, keep his core body temperature stable for 6 hours, which is just insane. He's
incredible. It's a story. If I did not really believe it, I would be like, oh, this is just making things up. But when you wrote about it, and I was like, all right, I believe that. When Bonnie wrote about it, I was like, I believe it. And then I also did some personal research because I was like, all right, it's fascinating, the biological aspect, because my background, I have a degree in environmental policy, so I focused in biology and I focused in environmental policy. I was like, all right, I want to get to know the biology behind this. And it was so fascinating that his genetics allowed him to have the body fat content to let him swim successfully for 6 hours in frigid water.
Right. And it's so interesting because now, I mean, that was back in 1984, so he was the first person ever to be known to have that. And then now, of course, there are many more studies having been done on people who can really tolerate cold water immersion for longer, and sort of what happens physiologically with them, and what happens to the rest of us, normal people, normal, unspecial, unhuman seal-like people who are in cold water, how our bodies, react, and sort of, and again, from back, so kind of it all flicks back to the safety aspects of like what happens when your body, what can happen when people are encountering the shock of cold water and how they react, and how that leads often to drowning incidents and all that.
the shock of cold water will definitely freeze up.
But I
Yep.
always, I think that you and I are in agreement that we wish that swimming education was universal and part of
Yes.
physical education. That would be amazing. That
When
would
I
be.
used to sit on the Commission of Women, Children, and Seniors Task Force for Water Safety Task Force, one of the topics that was brought up, two topics were brought up, which I thought were phenomenal. Swimming lessons mandated in all the towns in Connecticut, part of the curriculum from K through 12, which I thought was going to be phenomenal if it were to be developed and passed. And the other thing that was being worked on was swim lessons and the need for swim lessons for those on the spectrum and those that have special needs, because
Right.
the some water and how great it works with those that are on the spectrum to help ease them and help them understand what's going on. And one thing that I did pick out from those meetings that was very important was those that are on the spectrum, whenever they went missing, when they were kids and they went missing, they were always usually found in areas where there was water. They're always drawn to water. And they're, we all, like, I have a natural draw to water, you have a natural draw to water, we all have this natural draw to water. It was great to know that water helps calm them down. And when they're in a tough situation, they're going to go right for the water to help relieve their stress and to help them ease a little bit more. So I thought it was phenomenal to know that, and that there was a lot of training being done in Connecticut with a lot of different search and rescue departments to go to say, hey, listen, whenever there's someone who has special needs that did run away from home, our first spot that we're going to check is the local lake, the local pool, the local pond.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. And I actually just saw Adonis Martin has a question. Would you say our connection to water begins in the womb? I think my answer is sort of tied to that, because we, so in the last section of the book, which is called Flow, it's about our sort of psychological as well as physiological responses to water and immersion.
Yes.
And it's very calming. The sound of water, we know from scientific studies, seeing water is very calming. It activates, alpha brain waves, which are associated with like calm, relaxation, creativity. And a lot of it is also tied back to being in the womb, where if you can imagine it, of course, the sound is similar to when you're underwater, right? It's like the muffling, babies in utero can kind of recognize their mother's voices from the inside, and it's like it's all through this this hush, right? This sort of like dull oceanic roar, and then when you come out, think about what are the time-tested ways to soothe the baby is that you turn on the white noise machine to like rolling ocean waves or whatever, and
it works.
And because it is simulating a lot of similar kind of conditions along with like swaddling and all this, that is the sound quality that is reminiscent of being in the womb and is soothing. And so it makes sense that we are all, when we come out, that we are all drawn to that, the sound of the crashing waves, even if we don't know how to swim, is that we find that familiar in a very beneficial sense. And I think that now sort of more broadly applicable is like in this time of very palpable anxiety and stress, that to be able to find water and get in it and swim around for a little bit, even if you aren't, generally speaking, a huge swimmer. A lot of people have found the practice actually during this COVID time that it's something that relaxes them, makes them feel calm, and sort of like marshaling their resources to kind of deal with like all of the stress in life right now. And the swimmers who have always done that know that, and now it's this heightened, just with everything that's happening in the world, that makes sense. That you're lucky if you have that available to you.
And to parse from your book, you said it's the last place someone can not contact you. It's the last place where you can't be reached. And I thought that was beautiful, because that's what I use as my escape. I do two things to escape from and disconnect from the world. I hike and I swim. I hike in areas where there's no service. It's not great, because if there was something that went on, it would, the SOS is needed. But swimming, I don't have my phone on me. Swimming, I don't listen to music. Swimming, I'm listening to the rhythm of the water and experiencing it as I chop through with my freestyle stroke, or I cut through with my breaststroke. And it's that last place where I can just unplug, unwind, and not think about anything.
Right.
That's
It's
the best
meditative,
part.
and it's you know, and it's that enforced isolation that I think is actually a really good for us, because we are always, and especially now, we're constantly, this is the way we have to connect with other people
Yep.
virtually and digitally, and just find, but like it's something that you find then it's very difficult to turn off. And if you have, again, like this enforced thing that you do that doesn't allow for that, you realize how much you needed it, how much you needed the silence, how much you needed the quiet.
Yeah. To go back to Margot's second part of her question, is it expensive to operate a swimming pool? Uh,
Yes. Yes, it
yes, the put it cut and dry, yes. I like to say in aquatics, you do it right or you don't do it at all. You know, you have to pay for lifeguards, you have to pay for pool chemicals, you have to pay for electricity for the pumps, you have to pay for, you know, different services to be provided at the pool. One big thing that I'm all in favor for that a lot of pools do is safety gates so that kids don't go running into the pool, which people have at their homes. And, you know, a lot of facilities have them. There's a lot that goes into pools, and there's a lot for management. There's a lot for operations, and it's costly. It is very costly. But the upside is you're providing a great facet to the community. You are providing a lifelong skill to those that do take swim lessons. You're providing an area for people who choose swimming as their recreation or as their physical training to be able to participate in swimming and be able to participate as part of the community. So it's a great expensive thing. I think pools are phenomenal. I think, you know, even if you can incorporate it in a school budget, New Fairfield was great at having the pool available. Their swim team always practiced. Ironically, the coach from New Canaan High School and the coach from the New Canaan YMCA are both New Fairfield graduates. So to even go deeper with, you know, how much of a recreation town is and how important swimming is to us, two coaches that I know that are in this area are from New Fairfield. So I would say that it's a great investment for schools. I think it would be
for
a
sure.
phenomenal investment, even if it's busing kids to a YMCA to take some lessons, or taking kids to the ocean if you're along the ocean and it's, you know, warm where you are year round. I think it would be a great investment and it's worthwhile.
I see Nina's question. What do you think about the documentary Kim Swims? Did you have a chance to speak with her? She's in the book. So the second section of the book is on well-being. So for everyone who doesn't know her already, Kim Chambers is the first woman to swim solo from the Farallon Islands off the coast, 30 miles off the coast of San Francisco to San Francisco. And she did that incredible feat in shark-infested waters not that long after taking up cold water, open water swimming here in the Bay Area, after almost losing her leg to amputation after an accident. So she's incredible. I have not really I've not wanted to swim long distances like she does. I mean, that's 30 miles, probably more, because she's getting shoved around by currents in the open ocean. I would say that's not really my thing. I did swim quite a bit with her because I wanted to get a taste of what that was like. But you know, the Alcatraz swim was plenty for me. But it is that it's more, I think, the openness of the ocean and the uncertainty that you encounter when you're out there, and that's pretty special and pretty amazing.
Yeah, I did not get a chance to see the documentary, but in Bonnie's book she did mention it, so did get to hear about it. It is on my list of documentaries to watch. I do like documentaries, so I am the nerd that sits at home on Netflix going through the documentaries to see what I have not watched yet.
All right, I think the last question was about favorite swimming strokes, and I would love, we should do a poll.
Oh yes, can we do a poll?
Everyone who's still left here with us want to type in their favorite stroke, and we'll do a poll, because I'll tell you mine. It's breaststroke. But it was my favorite competitive stroke. My least favorite is freestyle. I actually...
You know what? Mine too. You know, my least favorite is freestyle. And my issue is I don't know what it is, but my shoulders get tired and I get so winded doing freestyle. But ironically, my favorite stroke is butterfly. I'm going to say it, I properly learned how to do the butterfly stroke about 4 years ago. I was so proud of it.
Let me tell you an interesting fact about butterfly that you might not know, which is that butterfly came from breaststroke.
I found that so fascinating. I
Right?
found that really fascinating. So I learned that. So when I became a water safety instructor, that was something they talked about. And I was like, how does this turn into this? And I was like, I get the body movement. I started putting piece and piece together. I was like, that makes a ton of sense.
Well, it was just that people started doing this, doing the arms out of the water because they realized that that was would increase your speed.
Yep.
And then they still kept the frog kick.
Which
And then
yep.
they said, all right, now this is going to be its own different. And but that makes sense to me that that was how it evolved because it really is in its current form extremely not intuitive to the human body.
It's I love it because it's a fast stroke and I'm able to propel myself a great distance, but
So hard.
it makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes
It's
no
my
sense.
favorite stroke to teach. I'll tell you that too. It's one of my favorite strokes
Really?
to teach. Yep. And I normally get the kids to do it in a session where I'm like, all right, let's work hard on this and I break it down. I break it down let's start with the dolphin kick. Then we stand in the water and I usually it's level 4 where we start teaching it. And so I usually tell them, all right, I want you to put your hand there. I want you to smash the water as hard as you can and then come back up, but don't bend those elbows. And they're like,
Water. I like
they'll
that.
smash the water. They're like, oh, I'm like, yes, just like that. And then we start building it piece by piece and they get it. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is a great stroke. I'm like, totally not a stroke you're going to use every single day of your life, but it's a great stroke
I think breaststroke won. I'm looking at these votes.
I think breaststroke did win.
I definitely think breaststroke won. Matt, I'm gonna need you to show me how to butterfly.
Absolutely. I got you, Julia. Right.
Comment in the chat if you are unable. I look at people at the Y. You know, I love swimming. I'm not a great swimmer. I look at people at the Y and they're like crushing the butterfly. I'm like, but I wish that we could talk all night about swimming. Hearing you guys so knowledgeable and clearly so passionate about all things swimming, from coast to coast. Bonnie, to be able to, have you here. I don't know if we would have thought to do this if it wasn't for the pandemic. I don't know if we would have had the budget to fly you out here. So I'm so grateful for you to make the time kind of in the middle of your later afternoon when you might have been swimming to talk with Matt. And Matt, thank you so much. I know that you were teaching swimming classes all day. I'm always hungry and hangry after swimming laps, so you must be starving. So thank you so much for coming. And everybody, thank you so much for participating in the chat. Keep the conversation going. Please buy or take out this book. It is so good. One of my favorite lines that I marked it up, of course, was a quote from Yukonovich: "Swimming in water is the only state of being I know where I feel free." And I feel that every day. And so, Bonnie, thank you so much for inspiring me and so many other people to just get in the water every day. And Matt, thank you for making it an option for people like me.
Anytime.
Thank you so much.
It
was really a pleasure. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Julia Ray. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Julia Ray.
Buy books.
And sign up for the YMCA if you paused your membership during the pandemic. Unpause it. Get back in that pool.
Just come on back. It's great. I promise. It's safe and great.
Thank you.
All right. Have a terrific evening. Stay safe over there with the fires, Bonnie, and the pandemic for everybody else. But you know what? We got the water and we can do this together. So thank you so much and have a terrific evening.
You too. Bye-bye.